Yeah. So before we get started, I want to actually take some time to recognize a few people and a few companies. The very first is the ISSA, and ISSA has been instrumental. Brian Engel and Vern Williams and others helped in actually securing and speaking to Marianne, and Marianne was, was willing to come and graciously accept our invitation to speak in our meeting today. OWASP has always been a supporter, so I want to take time to recognize them. And then BSidesAustin. How many of you here for the BSides conference too? Right? Good stuff, right? Good stuff. And great group of folks. Michael Koff. He actually, as soon as we found out that we we were having the meeting at the same time as BSides, some of them had the concerns about losing attendance, one from the other. So spoke with Michael. Without any question, he agreed to actually help us with regard to giving this venue. And he said that you could use this facility in the interest of fostering the community together and for the community to come together. So thanks BSides. And they actually told us, Michael just told me, after this is over, if you're not registered for BSides and you want to actually stay in for some of the talks, Marianne is going to be on a panel, so if you want to stay in for some of the talks, you're welcome to do so. Help yourself to the facilities as well as to the conference itself. So BSides, again, thank you so very much. Michael is out there in the back, so Michael, show your hands. We just recognized you and thank you for all the stuff that...
We do what we can.
Thank you very much.
And you're welcome to stay afterwards and mingle and come downstairs and be part of the party for the rest of the day. You're really welcome.
Watch out for this guy, though.
Yeah.
Thank you, Michael. So Michael and BSides committee, thank you very much. And then I also want to take time to recognize Websense. They are the sponsors for the FUD today, so thank you very much. Websense is actually new to the Austin area, so I'm going to actually ask Alex to quickly talk a little bit about Websense, but also some of the opportunities they have in terms of recruiting here in the Austin area. So.
Yeah, thank you guys for having us today. Yeah, feel free to get any of that piece. I'm not going to be able to take any back with me. Yeah, so Websense, we had a pretty big change, in our company. We saw a lot of opportunity in the Austin area, so we've moved our corporate headquarters from San Diego to the Austin, Texas area, which really is exciting just because of the fact that now there's so many jobs, in IT, finance, marketing, sales, tech support. We think it's 550 jobs that we're bringing to the area. We're doing. I'm a recruiter. I'm trying to do my part to stimulate the economy. So hopefully you guys will. Okay. Well, I might be able to get some money your way. So. We're really excited to be out here. We know there's just so many good IT professionals in the area, and that's kind of one of the reasons why we decided to come out here, just to give you guys a little bit of exposure to who we are. I mean, we are one of the global leaders in internet security, mobile, email, all of that, and we really want to be able to take our company to the next level with our growth. But that does start here, and it starts with you guys. So thanks for having us. And if you have any questions for me about any opportunities, I know everyone, the vice president and got, our CFO, he's in the house today. I am interested to see what you have to say also. So I will let you get to it. And thanks so much.
Thank you, Alex.
All right. Thank you, guys.
So Hackformers, for those who are first-timers and for those who are fully not sure as to who we are and what we do. First-timers I asked about that. And Hackformers, who we are. The name actually comes from hackers who are information security professionals, right? It's the white hat kind or the good kind. And we're transformers who commission Christians with a mission. The mission that we have is very simple. It's teach security, teach Christ, and teach security in Christ. It's important for us to be educated in security, and it's also important to be educated in the things that are eternal and that give us true security. Somebody actually told, and I like this because, try us out, try Christ out, right? If you don't like him, the devil is always willing to take you back, right? So give him a shot if you've been on the edge, like, hey, what is this soul Christ thing about? But we are here to teach Christ, teach security, teach Christ, and teach security in Christ. We are actually a Christian faith-based organization that is involved in security activities, not a security organization involved in Christian activities. I say that because sometimes we get kind of branded as being divisive. We're not divisive, we're open to all in terms of being inclusive. In fact, you can see the testament of BSides and Hackformers working together. So we're here in the hacking community, we're here in the InfoSec community, and we have a mission that we are trying to do. We're not competing with any of the local churches as well, so we're actually augmenting the churches if you look at it from that standpoint. So we're not, and who we are is something for us to understand. How do we actually operate? We actually operate every month by having an educational meeting. It actually kind of humbles me to say that it's been 2 years now since we started this organization. And kind of like Brian Engel and a few of us met in an Olive Garden a couple of years ago, and we thought about, it was not the Garden of Eden, but it was a garden. So we met there in the Olive Garden. We were thinking about what is our mission, and it's about 2 years now. So thank God for all His mercies and grace in bringing this. What happens is actually a speaker presents on an information security topic, and then there's a panel that's usually drawn, simultaneously or after the fact of the presentation of the topic itself from the scripture, and then we talk about how it applies to our personal and professional lives. So for example, Michael Howard, when we had like our second or third, so Michael Howard, who's well known, the Writing on Secure Code author from Microsoft. When he spoke in our meeting, he actually talked about banned APIs and sins within. And this is what he had to say. He said, well-written code plus one vulnerability makes that entire system vulnerable, right? So it's an insecure system with just one vulnerability. And then he drew the pattern to saying a righteous person with one sin, right, makes that entire person unrighteous or sinful. So how does this apply to personal lives and to our professional lives? In the professional space, you replace banned APIs with something that is a safer alternative, a security element of teaching what security is. On our professional, on the Teach Christ part, you replace sin with something that is not sinful, and that is Jesus Christ, according to what the scripture says. So it's very simple in terms of the mission as to what we have to do. And then we also tweet at Hackformers, and there's a blog that we have that you can follow when you go to hackformers.org. There are Bibles. If you need one, take one. There's the website. That's the website that you need to go to get more information. I'd highly recommend, if you're interested in following through, we have some series of and some high-profile speakers that are coming to talk in our town. And so, if you're going to be following us, then I'd ask you to subscribe via email, so you get the information as soon as it is, as soon as it is posted. How many of you have a Twitter account? All right, at Hackformers is the Twitter account. The Bible actually has a person called Apostle Paul who said, "Follow me as I follow Christ." Right? And I'm over here, Mono Paul. By the way, I'm sorry I didn't introduce myself. I'm Mono Paul, not the Apostle Paul, right? But I'm Paul here telling you, follow Hackformers as Hackformers follows Christ. We have a YouTube channel for those who are remote that can't actually attend our meetings. And the good news is that the word is getting spread out, and then there is actually an interest now of local chapters in other states and other cities that they want to open up an Hackformers kind of activity or an organization over there. So we don't know what God is in store, but we're relying on Him and waiting for Him to show us the way. LinkedIn, there's a group as well. Store for swags like that. I've got a cool T-shirt over here, right? If you want Hackformers, I got a strip here, right? And this is what it says: Teach security, teach Christ, teach security in Christ. And I'll just leave this really. Should I wear the jacket or not wear the jacket?
Whatever. Take it all off.
Come on.
Take it all off.
You guys have to vote one way or the other, right?
What do you want?
Take it off. Who said that? Kevin. Right? And then stickers and business cards are out there as well. So with announcements, every month we meet actually the first Friday. This is the time we have to meet on the third Friday, because Mary Ann was going to be coming, and we kind of lined this up so that it meets, it accommodates her schedule. 11:30 to 1 p.m. We actually meet at the Microsoft Technology Center that is in the Stone Hollow Drive. This time around we actually met, we did this over here because of the B-Sides conference that's going on. The upcoming meetings, in about 2 weeks from now, April 4th, there's going to be a meeting, or there's going to be a talk. We started a series called the Kali Linux operating system, where we actually show and demonstrate common attacks, and we're going to actually do a cross-site scripting, a security perspective, and a spiritual or a scriptural perspective from the Bible. So register at Hackformers. The registration is open already, so if you're interested in staying. So today's meeting is going to be Mary Ann Davidson. She's going to be talking about how Joshua lost Jericho, cybersecurity secrets from the Bible itself. Mary Ann is the CSO of Oracle, and rather than actually tell you her resume, because she's got so much that we won't have the time to be able to go through, but she's an ISSA Hall of Famer, she's a good personal friend. I met her about 10 years ago probably, or 7 to 10 years ago when I was still working at Dell at that time, and not Hell, Dell. All right? So, no, great company. And I met her at that time, and then we've been in touch. Actually, Mary Ann, she's, besides all the stuff that you knew about her, she's also as an author. Some of you probably know she writes murder mysteries with her sister. But she's also an avid surfer. And though she's not a native of Hawaii, she speaks Hawaiian fluently. And so, you know, if you guys know Hawaiian stuff, then talk to her and she'll be interested in talking to you. Or if you surf, then you have a common interest as well that you can talk with Marianne about. So the only thing I know about Hawaiian is my name, Mano, in Hawaiian, and correct me if I'm wrong, means shark. And I used to be a shark researcher before I came to the world of security. So the way I look at it is there are sharks at sea and then there are sharks at land, like hackers, right? And so we're kind of trying to make sure that the sharks at land are tamed, you know, or controlled. So without further ado, Marianne Davidson, CSO of Oracle, let's give her a warm Hackformers welcome.
So a small disclaimer here. I actually gave this talk at RSA, or at least I gave it in pieces. And when I put it together, well, somebody said, why would you do a talk like this at RSA? Well, my evil plan for world domination, because I'm not technical enough to actually do one of the really clever tracks where I analyze some new type of vulnerability. You're all way better than that than I am. But I decided to do something a little different that might catch their eye, and it sort of worked. Although I got so ambitious, it turned out I was doing this for the 20-minute slot, and I had so many stories. Fortunately, they asked me to do it twice, so I did half of it in one, so half of it in one slot and half of it in another. It's the first time I've actually ever done it together. So if you actually attended RSA, you're welcome to sleep through this. Please don't snore. Okay, so the first question people ask, why in the Sam Hill would you actually do a paper on this topic besides my evil plan to get into the RSA conference? And part of it is, I actually felt somewhat vindicated because the morning that I gave this talk, I heard 3 conversations that talked about, sort of the impasse between people who are really good at technology and those who actually have to understand it. And one of them was actually very sad. He was the CEO of a security startup. And he said, I can't actually talk to my engineers because I don't speak Dolphin. Then there was somebody else who made sort of the same comment about, he was a consultant who said a company he'd been consulting at, the chief executive thought everything was fine in their network. He said, "Did you ever talk to the network engineers?" He says, "Well, no, because we can't communicate." So the real thing I'm talking about here, and why I gave that talk, is the people who are technically brilliant, and I'm sure you all are, you have hacking skills that I'm never going to have. But nonetheless, you need to be able to explain this to people who are decision makers or policy makers in terms they can understand. Otherwise, we are going to fail spectacularly. I'm lucky to have hackers who work for me, and they're really good at what they do. And their job is to try to break into Oracle so that we can make our products better, right? Customers, so people aren't doing it for real. And one of the ones who's the most valuable, it's not just the particular skill set he has technically, which is considerable. Is that he can explain things that even blondes can understand, and he does. He's a very good communicator, so I understand exactly how that thing worked, and he does it in a way that's not threatening to developers. If you ever work with developers, bless their hearts, a lot of them can have really good egos about their particular technical expertise, and if you come across like, well, your code is crap and I just totally annihilated it, they're going to be very defensive and not necessarily listen to what you have to say, even if you're right. So the fact that he could communicate in terms that were, so that the average person could understand it, is what makes him, that's at least as valuable as his technical skills. And a lot of this is about analogies and telling stories, back to why am I talking about the Bible. So again, why would I talk about this? Well, the Bible has a lot of wisdom in it, and one of which is there's nothing new under the sun, and there really isn't. We think this technology stuff is all new and whiz-bang and cutting edge, but the one thing that doesn't change is human nature. And a lot of the problems with security is human nature, whether it's people writing it who don't think their code could ever be attacked, or the people who, oh, isn't it nice those people in Nigeria are offering to make me a millionaire again? I think I'll click here. So human nature doesn't change, hence shall the Ethiopian change his skin or the leopard his spots. Human nature really has not changed much in the last 2 or 3 millennia. Jesus, of course, talked by parables. So what's a parable? It's a story. Because the average person, in the first century Judah was not necessarily very educated. So instead of coming up with something very complicated about a spiritual truth, he would say, well, the kingdom of heaven is like a mustard seed, and then proceed to explain it, and then the light bulb would go, oh, I see, I get it now. And that's sort of what I try to do. I'm not a technical whiz by any stretch of imagination, but I'm good at creating analogies, and those analogies seem to be able to help people understand what the security point is I'm trying to make. You know, the other thing is, frankly, we live in a world where people use a lot of expressions from the Bible, but because it's not read so broadly, they don't understand the source. So, for example, so-and-so is as old as Methuselah, or read the handwriting on the wall. Well, that comes from the book of Daniel. I'm actually going to talk about that. The Good Samaritan. People use these expressions all the time, and they don't actually know where it comes from or what the story is behind it. So my few caveats, well, one of them I already gave you. I'm not a hacker. You all know how to do that. I don't. I don't think I could hack my way up a paper bag with a machete. But my intent here, per se, is not proselytization, unless, of course, it's of the repentant or security sins type. Forgive me, Father, I didn't validate input properly. Well, that would be 2 Hail Marys and 3 secure coding classes. And you're welcome to correct my exegesis, which is the fancy Greek word for how you interpret the text, or the great Jewish scribes would say midrashim, the midrash. How do you read out from the text? Oops, sorry, went backwards. Okay, so I promise I'm not going to read the whole Bible, but there are a number of stories here that lend themselves well to what I'm talking about. So Adam and Eve, actually there are 2 accounts of creation if you read carefully. And in one of them, basically, God creates the heaven and earth, blah, 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 and then he creates man. And before he creates a helpmeet for him, he gave some pretty, a lot of you are probably parents and you understand that kids like to misinterpret what you say. But what he says is, okay, you can eat anything in the garden, but not from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. And so that was pretty clear, No, you cannot put the cat in the washing machine. You cannot put the cat in the washing machine. So then he creates, Eve. And Eve, encounters the serpent. And the serpent says, well, God didn't really mean that. He didn't really mean that you couldn't do that. He's really just saying that because he's a meanie, and if you eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, you'll be the way he is. And that's why he's just being a party poop. He doesn't want you to do that. So, of course, Eve, takes the fruit and then hands it to Adam, and whereupon they realize, boy, hey, we don't have any clothes on. Let's go find some clothes. Now it becomes more interesting because, God looks for them and they hide themselves. And sort of, well, why didn't you come when I called you? Well, because we realized we were naked, and we're calling the gig's up, and God says, look, you did what I told you not to do, and now I'm going to do a couple of terrible things. Eve, you're always going to be subordinate to your husband. Adam's going to have to work really hard to get food, and by the way, I'm kicking, I'm evicting you from the Garden of Eden. So you kind of look at this and say, I kind of joke with this, but users are always going to click on the apple. They were tricked. And that's one of the reasons why you say, well, this isn't a technical problem. No, it isn't, but most of cybersecurity isn't necessarily a technical problem. It has a lot to do with humans, what they do and what they don't do, which is why companies spend a lot of time doing security awareness. And I was joking about the Nigeria scams, but let's face it, a lot of things that come across in your inbox look pretty realistic. I get things from allegedly a bank that look just like the bank, and I might happen to have an account there, and if you call up the number, because I did this one time, the answer is if they're the bank. I know very well that Bank of America is not going to send me something by email and ask me to verify something, and that's only because I read the same scary articles that you do. But the average person, when it's that realistic looking, isn't going to know, and the serpent was pretty clever. So yeah, users are always going to click on the apple. But the other thing here is, you wonder if the story would have been differently if they fessed up quicker. Right? Okay, God, I'm really sorry. I know you told me not to do that, but I did it. And instead, they kind of lied about, no, that's not what's going on here. So any organization, people are going to be tricked. Just assume it is. But make sure that you have a really fast mechanism for them to say, you know what, I'm sorry. I know I shouldn't have clicked on that link, but I did. And we've had, I've seen incidents of that where that was actually fairly successful in being able to at least contain damage. So here we go. There's the serpent in the background. Eve has the apple and is trying to convince Adam that he needs an afternoon snack. So Joshua. So the basic story is now the Israelites have gone through the Red Sea and they're about ready to take possession of the land of Canaan, which God has promised them. And they're on the other side of the Jordan. So Joshua sends a couple of spies to Jericho. And, well, they actually survey the whole land when they go to Jericho. And they, for some reason, they end up pretty much directly at the house of Rahab, who turns out is a prostitute. Oh, sorry, sex industry worker. To use the correct terminology now. And she hides them, but she also says, look, everybody is scared to death because they've heard about, the Red Sea parting, and the plagues, and all this stuff. And, I'm pretty convinced you're going to take over. So please, I'm going to hide you, but please don't waste me and my family when you come back and take the city. And it's interesting because the king of Jericho, for some reason we don't know, knew really quickly that there were spies in town and went right to Rahab, and she basically distracts him and says, oh, they left, they went out the back door, go off and find them. And meanwhile, she hides the spies. They say, fine, we will, as long as you don't give us up, we'll protect you if you put this little silk cord red cord around your house. She was, I guess, near the outer wall, and get all your family in there. That's the one room that we're not going to waste. So they go back and they report to Joshua, and then Joshua gets very specific instructions from God about how they're going to take the city. And they have 7 priests with 7 ram's horns. They have soldiers in front. Then they got 7 priests with ram's horns, 7 ram's horns. Then they've got the Ark of the Covenant, and then they got more guards behind. So he's very specific. We're going to go around the city once for 6 days. On the 7th day, we're going to go around 7 times. And then, when Joshua gives the command, everybody's going to have a great shout, but not before. So there's very meticulous, very clear plans. This is exactly what we're going to do. And of course, it works because God wrote the story. And the entire city collapses, and they go in and kill everybody except Rahab, because she kept her part of the bargain. So you look at this and say, I actually say APT is angelic persistent threat, because obviously they had, if you believe what you read, divine intervention. But the point is, she was an insider. I have no idea why they ended up right at her house. And she's somebody who figured out this is in my interest because to protect myself and my family. You can't really blame her for that. It's either help the invaders or die. But also, not that it was an advanced persistent threat as we term it, but they were very persistent. It wasn't like they walked up to the door, knocked on it, and all the walls fell down. They had very specific instructions on exactly how you're going to do this. And that's what people who are trying to get into your networks do. They are very persistent, they're very meticulous, and they plan things. When you look at some of the stories come out or analyses of how particular attacks have worked. It's not like the average, they walk up the door, knock on your firewall, and you're let in, and all of a sudden they get access to everything. There we go, there's the wall crunching down. Samson. This is one, there are a lot of stories that you think you know, and then you read them and you realize you didn't quite get it, and this is one of them. Because you say Samson, somebody says Delilah. It's like apples and oranges. However, there was a backstory to this that I didn't really know until I started reading this. So the backstory is, it turns out Samson was married before. He met a nice girl, Philistine girl. Well, those Philistine girls are always leading their nice Jewish boys astray. And so his first wife, he met in Timnah, and while he was going to, I guess, a feast, a lion jumped him. Because, I should back up a little bit and say, when he was born, it was told that his mother and father were told that he would be a Nazarite, which means that they couldn't cut his hair, he would be dedicated to God, and so he couldn't drink alcohol, and they couldn't cut his hair. So anyway, he's jumped by a lion. He's very, very strong, and he basically rips the lion in pieces and leaves it there. And on the way back from the feast, he sees that bees have colonized it, and there's honey there. So he takes some of the honey and he eats it. And he takes a bunch back for his parents. And then when he gets married to this girl, there's a big, like 7 days of feasting, and there's a bet that goes on. And basically, Samson says, if you can guess my riddle, then I'll give you, because there's, I guess, 30 male guests from the bride's side, 60 sets of clothes, 30 really nice ones and 30 not quite as nice ones. Otherwise, it's the reverse. So the guests on the bride's side basically threaten the bride and her father that you have to figure out the answer to this riddle, or we're going to be in a lot of good clothing here. So his wife, of course, who's afraid for her life, just sort of, finally, she keeps asking him every day, what's the answer to this riddle? Which had to do with, I think it's out of I can't remember what it is exactly, but it basically was from the eaters, something to eat, from the strong, something sweet. I'm sorry, I can't remember the exact translation of it, but basically it was about the fact he found the honey in the lion. So anyway, the relatives threaten her, and she keeps wheedling him day after day. Oh, honey, you don't really like me. Can't you tell me the answer to the riddle, you big, strong, wonderful thing? You batting her eyelids at him. And finally he gives it up, and of course then he loses the bet, and he's just angry, and he basically storms out and decides he's not going to go through with the wedding. She did end up later being killed. So now you have this reset and say, well, okay, you kind of think he would have learned something from feminine wiles, but no. A couple of years go by, and he meets Delilah, and she's sort of recruited by the Philistines because he's been creating a lot of havoc. And you find out the answer to why Samson is so strong. So she has the same number on him. How do you what's the secret to your strength, and how would somebody make you not strong? And he keeps misleading her. He says, well, timing with certain new bowstrings. So then the Philistines come in and try to do that, and of course he shakes them off and belts them. Then it's weave my hair into your weaving. So they do that, and so you think he would have caught on to this. Okay, wait a minute. She wheedles you this secret, you give her the wrong secret, then the Philistines mysteriously turn up and try that trick on you, only you're still strong. And finally, she wears him down. He says, well, if you cut my hair, I'll be a wuss. And that's what happens. And then they take him and they blind him, and the end of the story is he's brought into the temple, and by this time his hair is growing a little bit, and he prays to God, give me one last chance to waste my enemies, and he pulls the temple down on them. So another happy ending. So you but again, I look at this and say, what's the applicability of security? Well, you'd think he would have learned from prior attack patterns. God, you get two women coming up and batting their long eyelashes at you, trying to get your secret, and you keep giving it up, you idiot. You'd think he would have learned better. So, do we do this in enterprises? Do we look at what attacks were successful in the past? Does anybody look at audit logs, or you just look at them to see how you had owned 3 months ago? People should look for that. But also, the other part of this is just this refusal to think that anybody's going to do this to him. And frankly, that's when we talk to developers, kind of the first hurdle you have to get over is that nobody would do that, would they? Because the average developer does not think his or her code is going to be attacked. Complete denial. They're not really taught this in universities, to be fair to them, but to get somebody in the defensive mindset as, okay, your code is going to be attacked. You have to think about it, you have to design for it, and quit being in denial about this because you're building infrastructure. So nobody would do that. Of course they're going to do that. And there we go. So he's falling asleep, and they're about ready to give him a mohawk. So David, I think a lot of us know a fair bit about David. And there are actually sort of a couple of stories buried in here. Most of us think of Goliath when we say David and Goliath, but there is, again, as many things, it's a backstory. And I love the backstory. It's more for a personal reason I won't go into, but it's just got great drama where effectively God has rejected Saul from being king. And he goes to the prophet Samuel. He says, how long will you mourn over Saul, seeing as I've rejected him from being king over Israel? Go up to Bethlehem, for I'm going to appoint one of Jesse's sons as the king. And Samuel, being a good, upright prophet, says, you've got to be bleeping kidding me, because Saul is going to kill me if he sees I'm going up there. And so God gives him a cover story. Well, just tell him you're going to go make a sacrifice. So he does, and he meets Jesse, and Jesse invites him in. And then he starts traipsing out his sons. So the first one comes out, I think it's Eliab, and the Bible says he was tall and strong appearance. And so Samuel says, oh, it must be the guy, right? Looks really good on paper. And God says to him, man looks on outward appearances, but the Lord sees the heart. He is not the one. So then they go through a bunch of other, Eliab, Shammai, he goes through like 6 sons. I think it's 6. And finally, Samuel says, don't you have any more sons? And Jesse says, well, the youngest is out with the sheep. Well, okay, we're not going to sit down and have a feast until we bring him in. So they bring in David, who's the least likely one. He's the little, the runt, so to speak. And he comes in, and God says to Samuel, rise and anoint him, he's the one. So he's like, okay, I had to go through all this mishigas, good Yiddish word, and now I got the youngest one, who's not the big, strong, weightlifter. So through a series of happenstance, Saul, is prone to fits of depression, and David becomes a harpist to him. it's his moonlighting. He's still out tending sheep. And of course, the Philistines now have this big dude champion, Goliath, who it says is 9 feet tall, and he wears 60 pounds of armor, and he's challenging the Israelites to armed combat. You know, well, we'll just mano a mano, you and me will decide the whole fate of this. And nobody on the Israelite side wants to volunteer except David. David says, okay, I'll do this, but the battle's not mine, it's God. So here's this young kid, and they want to put armor on him. They actually do put him with the kings. He says, no, I can't do that. Can't do that. I don't know anything about this stuff. I'm going to use the weapons I have. So he goes out with, he's got a staff, and he has a sling, and he's got 5 smooth stones. And the one part of Goliath that wasn't armored was, and that's where he takes the stone, which he knows, because he'd already killed animals that were menacing his flock. So he knew how to use the sling. And gets him and stuns him, and then he cuts off his head, and the rest, as I say, is history. So you look at this, and this was not the most the likely candidate, as is so often the case, but he used the weapon in hand. So we think about this and say, what are the weapons at hand? A lot of organizations have weapons at hand. It might be software, like security software they didn't know they had, or they weren't deploying properly. It might be untapped talents in the organization. People have licenses they never use. It might be untapped talent in your organization. And actually, I think the man looks on outward appearances is an important lesson, because I'm thinking about a person who worked for my team a number of years ago, then left and went to a competitor, which I was happy that she did, not because I wanted to get rid of her. Quite the contrary. We couldn't offer her the next rung in the ladder, and they were lucky to get her to the point where I sent an email to my counterpart and said, you're getting one of the best people on my team, take really good care of her. And now he's back at Oracle in a different capacity. But one of the things that made this person so valuable wasn't the best hacker, wasn't the best person technically, wasn't the best presenter, wasn't the best at anything, but was the little engine that could. This is the person who, no matter what project I gave her, would figure out how to do it. And if she had a weakness, she would work on that, and then it became a strength. Now that's not the type of sexy person that most people hire. Oh, I want the person who is the technical whiz. But those, I said, the fact that this person could do anything and would figure it out and continually improve made her probably one of the most valuable people that I could have had working for me. And that's a wonderful attribute. But it's not the obvious ones. People look at resumes, oh, how many certifications do you have? How many mumbo-jumbo languages do you know? And those are important. Skills are important. But that thing that she had did not show up on the resume. So man looks on the outward appearances, the Lord sees the heart. In this case, this was a person who had and still has a heart for continually self-improving. And that is a very valuable attribute when you try to build a team. Oops, sorry. Go the wrong way. You'd think I would get the up and down buttons correct, but I don't expect too much. Okay, and there we go. And here's David already dispatch Goliath. So this next story is actually really interesting for a couple of reasons. Some of them are on a personal level. Basically, some of the stories are on King Hezekiah. And I've been very fortunate to get to go to Israel on business trips. I think one was a pleasure trip that I took. And I've gotten to see some of the places where these things took place, including Lachish. Why would anybody want to go to Lachish? Nobody goes there, except it's a really important part of the story. And this is also attested to in Herodotus. And there are very, as I will explain momentarily, there actually is extra biblical evidence for this story, which again makes it very interesting. So, Assyria laid siege to Israel and Judah. In fact, they took off, you've probably heard about the 12 tribes of Israel. 10 of them were basically taken off into captivity by Assyria. We've never lost them in history because the Assyrians effectively practiced genocide. They would disperse people, you couldn't keep your language, you couldn't keep your religion, so the 10 tribes gone, nobody knows what happened to them. And they had also taken pretty much every fortified city in Judah, except Lachish was the last one before Jerusalem. So now they're laid siege to Jerusalem. This is the last redoubt of Jews, effectively. And they taught them. They send up Sennacherib, who was the king of Assyria, sends up his emissaries to the gate and pretty much says, and what are you basing this confidence towards that your God will save you? Didn't the gods of Hamath and Arpad, the people have prayed to their gods, and has not my master Sennacherib destroyed them? And of course, this is all true. So they're so freaked out, it's a biblical term, that the people behind the gates in Jerusalem say, do not speak Hebrew to us, speak Aramaic, which is the language of diplomacy. That's not very diplomatic, actually, but they didn't want everybody else in town to hear what was being said. So the emissaries go to King Hezekiah, who rends his garment. He goes to the prophet Isaiah. Isaiah talks to God, and he comes back and he says effectively to Sennacherib, I know how you come and go and how you rage against me, and I will put a hook in your mouth and take you back from whence you came. So the Bible says the angel of the Lord slew 185,000 Assyrians in the night. And not that we found evidence of that. Now where it gets interesting, the things that are interesting about this story, one of the things that Hezekiah did when the siege was going on is he secured the water supply. Very important if you're going to withstand a siege and you're in a desert country, you have to make sure that you've got a source of water, otherwise nobody's going to make it. And I think it was probably about the 1940s, they actually found the diggings all the way through this rock to get down and secure this, this pool of water. And there were actually, it's an inscription where because it was started at each end and they were kind of building toward one another. If you go to Jerusalem, I think you could probably still go down that. And the inscription, I think, is in the museum in Turkey now. But that was really critical. Without securing that water supply, regardless of whether God's on your side or not, you ain't making it through the siege. And Sennacherib, as I said, did not take Jerusalem. I'm going to show you the picture in a minute. When they excavated his palace in Nineveh, they found, actually, there are 3 cuneiform stela that have, talking about what Sennacherib's side of the story. It says, I locked up King Hezekiah like a bird in a cage, meaning, the implication is that Hezekiah paid him off. Okay, I'll just give you a bribe, please go away, don't waste us. And we don't really know what the truth is. But it is true that the part of security is securing what's strategic. And if an enterprise doesn't know that, you can't really defend everything. You'd like to think you can, that nobody would ever get past the firewall, but you better darn well make sure that you've got your water supply secure. If an enterprise can't figure out, okay, what's in my enterprise, which are the most critical systems, make sure those things are secure, they're not going to be in business very long, right? Okay, so they took a couple of rock outcroppings. Who cares? That wasn't the part that was strategic, but that pool of water was. But the other thing I like to think about, and this is sort of the larger lesson, I think why I like this with this story, history actually has fulcrums. And one of the things that I find really, on a personal level, inspiring about this is about as bleak it was going to get. Because the Assyrians were, technical biblical term, badasses. They really had destroyed everything they touched. And that was as close as they get. So you're surrounded by badass of the ancient world who's wiped out everybody else, and it is as scary as it's going to get. And if he had taken that city, there would be no Jews in the world left today, or Christians either, for obvious reasons. So that was a fulcrum. Kind of look back and say, one of those little things on which history hinges. And there it is. There's Taylor's Prism. I think that's in the British Museum. I think there are a couple other stela that are similar. One of them I think was in Chicago. And this is a Rubens picture of Sennacherib's armies getting wasted. Might as well work a little nice art in here, right? So Nehemiah. There's actually a book. There's I think it's like a biblical study guide that I used one time in a Bible study. But Nehemiah is kind of an interesting book for a lot of reasons. Part of which is because it really has to do with the importance of planning. That doesn't seem really sexy, particularly if you're a hacker. You're just like, okay, I'm going to go in, I'm going to do this, and blah blah blah. But this is planning is a lot more important skill than people think it is. So the basic story is Nehemiah was one of the Jews who'd been taken off into captivity. The rest of the story is, well, the Assyrians did not take Jerusalem, the Babylonians did, and destroyed the first temple, and people were led off into captivity into Babylon. So Nehemiah is, one of his relatives comes to visit him, and it just says, it's really bad back in Jerusalem. The gates are destroyed, and people are not doing too well. And Nehemiah is very upset, and he prays to God. And sometime later, he goes in to see the king, who is Artaxerxes. Anyway, sorry, blonde woman, and who notices that he's unhappy. And what are you so upset about? And he tells them that my people are back in Israel are not doing well. Their enemies are surrounding them, and the gates have been burned and torn down. And so the king says, well, what do you want? This is an opportunity for him. And granted, he's prayed about it. He's prayed before. He utters a prayer. He says, well, okay, here's what I want. Here's what I need. And he's got his little list. He says, I'd like to go back and rebuild the gates, and I need a letter of safe passage. And by the way, I'm going to need a letter to go to your chief of forestry because I'm going to need so much wood and all these things to rebuild the gates. So he's got a plan. And so he goes back, and first thing he does is a survey. How bad is bad? And then he he starts creating this plan for rebuilding the walls. And so there's this whole passage of the Bible that talks about, and so and so and so and so, and they worked on this section, and so and so and so and so worked on this section. And of course they've got opposition from Tobiah and Sanballat, who they think are probably rulers of other areas nearby, because they're liking it like this. Hey, we can go do predations, there's no gates, this is really great for us, we can go and be nasty to people and shake them down. And so they're some of the people who are opposing them. So then they start working to rebuild, and they've got a weapon. Okay, we're busy, we've divvied up the work, we know exactly who's doing which work parties, but we've also got a weapon here in case somebody messes with us. So then they finish it, and then Ezra reads the law. And I'm giving you the very short form of this. But it's actually kind of impressive because it really did talk about planning. This is not a sexy part of security, but most of what people do, if you're going to build something, as opposed to just find ways to break it, involves planning. Okay, what would make this better? How many people will I need? What are the most important things to do first? As I said, I am not a hacker by any stretch of the imagination. I have people who work for me who are, and what they do is very important. But most of what they do has to be very leverageable, meaning if they just go break stuff, you've got thousands and thousands of products, that's not leverageable. So we have to, how do I take that lesson? Is it codified in a tool? Can we do, if they do one-on-one presentations, that's kind of limited, but if we do a webcast, we can reach people globally on how they broke something and what are the takeaway lessons from that. So that becomes very leverageable. So a lot of the, again, unsexy part of making security better really is having a plan. So it's fine to ask big, and he did. Basically, okay, I know you're serf here, but I want to go back to my homeland and rebuild the walls in the entire city. That's a big ask. But he knew what he needed. He certainly prayed, but he also had a plan. And it was very specific, and he knew what he needed, and then he went around executing it. And he was very disciplined in how he executed it, and that's what makes you successful. I have people working for me who are really good program managers. And in a way, I think they feel a little miffed because they're not as sexy as the hackers, right? Hackers are really cool, break this. And it is important. But the program team is the one who takes that and makes it repeatable. Okay, it's in the secure coding standards. It's that tool, we have a training class on how to use it. The lessons learned go back into other ways we can deliver this, so whatever we do to improve becomes highly leveraged. That's not sexy. It's really important if you're going to make things better. Okay, and then we have Nehemiah making his survey of the walls, and even his donkey doesn't look too thrilled. So, Book of Daniel. Most people will think, say Daniel, you think the lion's den, and that is one of the stories. But the one I think is more interesting is about Belshazzar. To make things really confusing, Daniel's name was Belteshazzar, so I try not to get them confused. But effectively, Daniel had a good track record. Again, he was also off in captivity, and he had explained to, worked with Belshazzar's father, Nebuchadnezzar. And Nebuchadnezzar was the one who sacked the temple. So they're off in Babylon, and Belshazzar is going to have a feast, and he decides he's going to use the good goblets, meaning he's taking the things that were looted from the first temple that was destroyed, goblets and so forth, and he's going to have his feast. Needless to say, God was not amused. So when there's in the middle of this feast, I mean, you see this hand coming out and writing on the wall, and nobody really, of course, that would freak the average person. Hey, there's a hand over there, right beneath that. And so he asks for someone, anybody who can interpret. I think it's his wife who actually remembers that there's this guy who did stuff for your father, and he could interpret dreams, and so that's the one they call for. And of course, he has the unenviable, he meaning Daniel, has the unenviable task of explaining something that nobody wants to hear. I'm sure none of us have ever had that experience of going into somebody and saying, you're not going to like this, but here's the way it is. And so what he says is, okay, effectively, God is not pleased with you. The writing on the wall he interprets is Mene, Farsin, which is translated as, he says, you have been weighed in the balance and found wanting. And so, they say prophets, what is it? Prophets without honor is in his own country. But in this case, his prophecy came true the next day. The Medes come in and basically, waste the place. So what Daniel had explained to Belshazzar is, you have been weighed in the balance and found wanting, and God is going to take your kingdom away from you. And of course, the next day, that's what happens. So one of the things I think is interesting about this story, and I didn't give you all the backstory, but Daniel had a series of things where he had to speak truths to somebody who didn't want to hear them. And that is a very difficult thing to do. And almost everything you read in that book has to do with that, like his friends being thrown into the fire because they weren't going to worship an idol, or him having to explain to Nebuchadnezzar what his dream meant, and it wasn't like a really pretty interpretation. Nebuchadnezzar allegedly went insane for a period of years and ate grass and all these things. So the point is, you have to think that one of the reasons he was called was remembered is that he was accurate. He didn't just tell the leader what he wanted to hear. He had a sense of integrity. He said, I'm going to speak truth to you, and even if it's not what you want to hear, and even if my life is going to be put at risk, I'm still going to tell you what I think the truth is. And that is a very difficult thing to do. It's particularly difficult in security. And I've had a couple of colleagues, not at Oracle, who have lost jobs over telling truths to their management. And I'm not going to tell you who they are because I'm respecting their confidences, but I have enormous respect for these people. And one of the reasons why whenever a headhunter calls and is looking for a name, those names are on the very short list of people I give out, because it is very difficult to say, okay, in one case it was asked to break the law, to do something. It was certainly unethical, not to mention illegal. And no, I'm not going to make records disappear. You might want these records to disappear because you'll do better in a lawsuit, but I'm not going to do that. That takes... Okay, yeah, that's right, you're shaking your head, but that takes a lot of guts. Now, it's easy to be high-minded, but okay, I got to pay my mortgage, I've got a kid who's sick. To stand on principle like that is a very difficult thing to do under a lot of pressure. Other pressures, another colleague was pointing out all the problems in an enterprise with poor security and was trying to develop a plan, here's the things we need to do, and there was a breach. You know, you'd think that there would be an opportunity there. Yes, you were right. Great, let's go forward with your plan. Instead, who got blamed for the mess? It was the person who pointed out the problems. They've got no support from his management. That's really difficult. So it's not the kind of the fun part of security, but it is important. Integrity is important. I can't fix what happened to my colleagues except to try to make a straighter path for them when they are looking for jobs, because anybody who gets them is really lucky to have somebody who speaks the truth. And then, of course, read the writing on the wall, and that's sort of the other part of it. Sometimes we are in positions where you realize that you are not going to be listened to. It doesn't mean you can't speak the truth, but sometimes the only thing you can do is to leave. I had that in another job, not at Oracle, where they weren't going to listen, and I was beating my head against the wall and said, I can't fix this, but I can leave. So that's what I did. This is actually a nice page. I think this is Rembrandt. It's in London. And there you have Belshazzar turning around. You'd think they should read this, by the way, except that it's top to bottom instead of right to left, which is the way Hebrew is. Anyway. Okay, I think last story, which is Jesus feeding the multitudes. So, not surprisingly, after John the Baptist was killed, Jesus wanted some alone time. I think all of us do. No matter how much you like your colleagues, there's a point where you say, I just need to get away from this and clear my head. But he was so popular that the whole crowd followed him. So like 5,000 people. So he didn't really get to have his alone time, but he does heal some sick people. And as it's getting later in the afternoon, he says to his disciples, well, really, you might want to think about feeding these people. Well, we don't have any food. Well, what do you got? So they have something like 5 loaves and 2 fishes, and then Jesus asks God to bless the food, and then it starts multiplying. And so the story is that they fed all 5,000. They had 12 baskets of food left over. So I think if somebody was going to do a Christian exegesis of this, they would probably talk about it in terms of feeding people spiritual truths, and they're feeding other people, and so the multitude is fed. But I actually thinking about this in terms of security. Many people actually do want to know more about security, but you can't give them 5,000 baskets of food and ask one person to eat that, right? I mean, not unless they'll explode. But one of the things it talks about is he broke the bread. He just didn't hand a full loaf out to everybody. He broke it. And so I think for security to be digestible by people who aren't experts, you need to find some way of chunking it. We have something like 400 pages of secure coding standards. I bet nobody's read all 400 pages. Maybe the authors have, but nobody's going to sit down and read 400 pages. You've got to find some way to put that in little chunks where it can be relevant. Okay, I need to know something about X. Okay, I'm not programming in that language, don't give me the whole big thing. Tell me the pieces that are relevant for what I'm trying to do. So they can get a piece that they're going to understand, and it's in small enough words that they can get it. Whether it's a video clip or a short training, again, you're trying to make people sit through 6 days of training for that, they're not going to make it. So yes, you're feeding people, because a lot of people want to know about this, but you've got to do it in some small chunks that they can actually do something with. And of course, the obvious one is that security is evangelism. So I can't speak for how other people have architected their programs, but one of the things that we did, I really try not to build an empire. I actually tell people my goal in life is to be out of a job because we're so successful that my team doesn't need to exist anymore. We'll find good jobs for them. And one of the ways we do that is I have less than 40 people, but we have something like 1,600 people that we indirectly influence, because for each development group there is a security lead who's like an architect type. And every component has to have a security, we call it Spock, not the Vulcan type, but a security point of contact. So those are our boots on the ground, and those are the people who implement our programs in individual groups. And we make them the experts, whether it's training, there's certain responsibilities they have to report what we do, so we can make sure that they're following the right practices, because we scorecard ourselves. But those are our boots on the ground. And so if we get 1,600 people who are head up on security and really shall we say, spreading the gospel of secure coding into development, that's what's going to make us successful, because I can't possibly scale, and I don't want to. If I went to my boss and said, you know what, I need a minder, we have 20,000 developers, I need 20,000 people to sit behind everybody's shoulder and tell them how to do the right stuff, you got to be kidding me. That's not going to work. I'm not going to get headcount for 20,000 people. Even if the hackers break into the system and give me 20,000, it's not going to work. It just will not work. So finding those people who are going to inspire other people is what's going to make you successful. That is not to denigrate individual accomplishment at all, but that is about the only way that we're going to. And frankly, on a larger industry level, it's sort of the same thing. It disturbs me to no end when I hear people, this is sort of another analogy, when you hear people say, oh, we need to train 30,000 cyber warriors, or 300,000 usually. I hear these ridiculous numbers quoted. And I said, there's a wonderful little story from childhood called about the little Dutch boy. The little Dutch boy saw that there were holes in the dikes holding back the waters in the Netherlands, so he went up and put his fingers in to kind of stop the water coming through. And I said, you guys are saying if we have 300,000 of those, we'll stop the flood. Good luck with that, because those dikes are going to blow, and you're going to have about 300,000 little drowned Dutch boys. The answer to that problem is to make sure those dikes don't blow. You need to engineer them better. They need to be a lot more resilient, and that is the problem we have with cybersecurity. It's, sure, do we need experts? Yeah, but what we need, it has these things engineered, designed, and built better. And because it is infrastructure and is going to be attacked. And if we did that, and we thought about this differently, and we made the dikes more resilient, we wouldn't need 300,000 Dutch boys who are probably going to drown anyway. So it really is evangelism. So last little snippets, I'm being slightly snarky here. I kind of joke that there are only two problems in cybersecurity. One of them is verifiable input coming from a trusted source, and rule 2 is see rule 1. Because every time we invent a new protocol, we have a new device, we keep making the same stupid mistake over and over and over again. So I love this. So test the spirits. A lot of people don't want to do that. Oh, it's too expensive to do the validation. Let's just accept it from the client. Good luck with that. Security by obscurity. Nothing is covered up that will not be revealed. Keeping and reviewing audit records. It's amazing to me how many people don't actually keep audit records. It's forensic. This is how we were owned. So yes, there are now systems that do things more proactively with them. But if you don't design a product to even have auditing, and you don't have any standards for that, and you don't collect them, and you don't analyze them, ideally real time, it's, what was the point? And security truths. Let your yes be yes and your no be no. And that one actually is fairly important, back to my integrity issue. I always tell my team, look, we are being paid for a best professional opinion, so we should give it. Management may make a decision we don't agree with, but we will have given them our very best professional opinion, and that is our responsibility. And I can say honestly, I have had managers who made opinions that were different, decisions that were different from my recommendations. It was never a matter of principle. It was we could do A or B. I thought B was better. He thought A was better. But the point is, we made our best recommendation. And it is really toxic to be in an environment where you feel like you have to give shaded information. And because I'm direct, I said, well, again, I've not had this happen in many years. I've been very fortunate. But the answer to that is, do you want me to tell you what you want to hear, or do you want me to tell you the truth? Pick one. I'm happy to spin fiction for you, but if you're paying me a lot of money for my best professional opinion, you should hear it. And if you want to make a different decision, that's fine, but now you've got complete information. It's very important, particularly in security. So, a little summary. And again, this is not obviously not very technical, because the last time I checked, there wasn't AES encoded in the Bible, despite people writing books about the Bible code. But a lot of this really gets down to human nature. What is the nature of people? What is the nature of problems? How do you address them? How do you slice them into smaller bits? How do you enlist people? How do you teach people they're going to be tricked, at least to be looking for that? Because that's a lot of the problems we face. We need really good technical people like you all. But we also need to kind of elevate it to realize that we're dealing with fallible humans, whether they're fallible people designing systems or fallible people using systems. And the real hackers, the people who are trying to break into systems, are the ones who know that all very well. So what's my conclusion? Yeah, there really is nothing new under the sun. I think even in cybersecurity, a lot of the problems that we see are problems that have not really changed that much in 20 or 30 years. But more to the point, a lot of people need to understand this now. I mean, when I started in this, it was a very weird subspecialty, and the only customers I ever talked to about security were 3-letter government agencies and the occasional bank. No one else really cared. And now it's front page news. If you say, I got a virus, half the time somebody might think you got a cold, and half the time they think your computer just got tanked. So it is front page. There are policymakers, chief executives. There are a lot more people involved in this discussion, most of whom are not technical experts. So whether you stand up in front of them and tell a Bible story, or you use the little Dutch boy, or you use fairy tales, or whatever it is, being able to explain things and use analogies. This is like this. The kingdom of heaven is like a mustard seed. This problem leads to this type of thing. It's just like that. Will help people understand the gravity of what you're trying to get across. And I think will help us be more effective. And if we're more effective, maybe we can start solving some of these problems a little better and faster. So that's my spiel, and I'm very happy to take any questions.
So before we get into questions, I just have a quick announcement. At 1 o'clock, there is another talk being scheduled in this room. So we may have a little bit, Miriam's going to be here for a little bit.
I'll talk fast.
So in case you can't get all your questions here, then make sure that you meet her outside. Be respectful of the fact that they've given us this location, and we try to clear up fast. We can use the features outside for those who haven't had lunch yet.
Yes.
So you spoke about, Marian, thank you for being here. First of all, really respect your time, appreciate it. So you spoke about the Bible, and you spoke about stories in the Bible, and you showed us how we can leverage those for security. What do you see the Bible as personally? Are those historical, or what's your take on it?
Well, I'm a Christian. I guess I didn't disclose that.
What do you mean by Christian?
It's that I really like history. One of the reasons I spent so much time in Israel is just understanding the history behind this. And that doesn't mean I don't believe that this is the Word of God, but I also believe in archaeology. They said the archaeologists will say absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. For example, we really have not found evidence for the Exodus. It didn't mean it didn't happen, but I think you cannot. Knowledge is never a threat to your faith. And it does disturb me occasionally when I read people who I think are subject to sort of the God-in-the-box syndrome. Okay. I can't learn anything. I can't learn the original languages and try to read the scripture in the languages, or because it might threaten my faith. Do you really think God is limited by your understanding of it? Seriously? Let the box get bigger. It's going to blow your mind. It's never been a threat to my faith. And I do. I didn't give you all the details, but there are a couple of stories there that I talked about that mean something to me personally, because at least in one case I felt like God used that story to make me a very specific promise. And when you've had one of those experiences, it's pretty mind-blowing. It's like, no, I know what I heard. I know that this was given to me, not just as part of the scripture, but it's given to me. And that doesn't make, it makes me fallible, but it means that these stories really live and breathe for me. And particularly when you can go to a place where one of them happened. That's why I went to Lachish. I didn't sort of tell you the rest of that story. There are reliefs from Sennacherib's palace at Nineveh that are in the British Museum. There are not many places you can go outside of Iraq and see parts of ancient Assyria, but the walls from his palace in Nineveh are there, and it shows the siege of Lachish, which is the last town that he took. And so there are people with their heads on pikes, they're being taken off into captivity. It's really kind of scary. And I went to Lachish because I wanted to see that place. It hasn't been rebuilt. But to stand at that place and say that was the last town he took, and there wasn't any more. Sennacherib never took anything after that. And it really meant something to me, because that is for me, that story is one of the scariest things that they could have faced. And when you realize how quickly it turned around. Now, no, okay, they haven't found 185,000 Assyrian dead bodies outside the gates of Jerusalem yet at this point. But you realize that it turned around and it was that close. And that inspires me to think, no matter how grim something looks, and I'm sure all of us have faced something in life where we think, oh my God, this is so terrible, and I don't know how I'm going to get out of this. And I don't know how something's going to change. And to know that in the past, that little sliver, that little fulcrum has changed so quickly is just, to me, really helps me get through the worst. That was a very long-winded answer. Sorry for that.
Can we hold off any questions for later? We need to exit the room.
Yeah, we're being evicted.
Gracefully ask everybody.